Tucked into the wild hills and tall trees of the Black Hills National Forest are 20 miles of sharp limestone cliffs, tumbling waterfalls, and rushing rivers. This is Spearfish Canyon, and it's been called by some the most stunning landscape in all of South Dakota. But did you know this scenic byway has seen its fair share of controversy, in addition to playing a major role in the settlement of this area? Hi, I'm Anna, this is Jeff, and we're on a journey to experience the world with our family through what we think of as thoughtful travel, where we take time to learn the history of the places we visit and experience as much of the culture as we can. Today, we're driving the length of Spearfish Canyon to see a 60-foot tall cascade and eat lunch in a recreated 1800s stagecoach stop that was, on the whole, not exactly what I expected.
I hear the children playing, and you are here with me.
This is our 5th episode exploring South Dakota, and we're spending our time today in the Black Hills National Forest, primarily the Spearfish Canyon area. As you can tell, for this episode, we've been hit with a bit of a late winter storm. This snow won't stop our adventures, though, because we've been living the last several years in Chicago, and before that, Connecticut. This South Dakota snow is fluffy, but it's got nothing on an honest-to-goodness nor'easter. Bonus, all of our adventures today are completely ADA friendly. Our first stop today is Bridal Falls. Fortunately, this one is impossible to miss from the road. A boardwalk gives you close-up views of both the falls and the creek down below without having to worry about traffic. At 60 feet high, this is the highest falls in the canyon and is a lovely beginning to the overall beauty of the area. Next, we're headed to Long Valley to get up close and personal with Spearfish Creek. Follow along with our map linked in the description to recreate this day trip for yourself. Legend around the naming of this area says that Native American tribes, back when this was still the Great Sioux Reservation, used to fish the creek. And that it was so plentiful they could stand in the water and spear the fish right up against the creek bed. Long Valley has picnic tables if you've brought food with you, and it's not snowing, as well as rustic bathrooms. 1935, Frank Lloyd Wright visited this area for the first time. He said, "On the East Coast, we hear endlessly about the Grand Canyon, but why not this area? Surely Spearfish Canyon is more beautiful than the Grand Canyon." I knew we couldn't pass up this opportunity to explore such a beautiful natural wonder. In fact, these limestone formations rise up to 1,000 feet from the floor of the canyon. They were carved by an ancient river over 600 million years ago, making Spearfish Canyon older than the Grand Canyon. Spearfish Canyon isn't without its own piece of controversial history. It's time for a brief, but I promise entertaining, history detour. This area became popular after gold was discovered in Deadwood Gulch in 1874. See my video on Deadwood for an in-depth look at that chaotic time. Spearfish Canyon didn't have quite the wide-open layout of Deadwood. As you can tell here, it can be downright impassable at times. So a few farms and some fisheries set up here and provided food for the miners. In 1887, 13 years after that first discovery of gold, a man and his brother dug up a piece of carved limestone that purported to be the final testament of an ill-fated gold prospector. The stone reads, "Came to these hills in 1833, 7 of us. De LeCompte, Ezra Kind, G.W. Wood, T. Brown, R. Kent, William King, Indian Crow. All dead but me, Ezra Kind. Killed by Indians beyond the high hill. Got our gold. June 1834. And on the back, got all of the gold we could carry, our ponies all got by the Indians. I have lost my gun and nothing to eat and Indians hunting me. At the time, this was big news. The man who unearthed the limestone was Louis Thoen, and the carving became known as the Thoen Stone. He put it up for display in his grocery, and tourists would even come see it. This seemed to confirm for many the presence of gold in the Black Hills as far back as 1834, and brought even more settlers to the area. This was problematic, as the U.S. government was still redrawing the Great Sioux Reservation, illegally, might I add, and many of the new towns like Deadwood and Spearfish were located inside the reservation. For a deeper look at how one of the largest Native American reservations in the country was rapidly turned into new territories for settlers and gold prospectors, watch my previous video on what you don't know about Rushmore. The real controversy of the Thoen Stone, though, is whether it's a fake. You see, there's the problem with the story it tells. Why would a man who just watched his entire party be killed and is himself on the run take the time to carve a message that would have taken him hours? Why not write it on paper? Or better yet, run and hide? And apart from the message it conveys, there's the problem of the carvings themselves. They are uniform, deep, and not what you'd expect to see from a man who was running for his life and in possession of little more than a pocket knife. Many experts have said they look professionally made. Oh, and did I mention Louis Thoen was a stonecutter by trade and even sold postcards of the stone eventually? There's a monument to the discovery of the stone at the north entrance to the canyon, which sadly we missed in all the snow. And the stone itself sits inside the Adams Museum in Deadwood. This brings us to Spearfish Falls, a 47-foot waterfall in the small town of Savoy. Park at the rest area and walk out onto the boardwalk to get a top-down view of this cascade. A 3/4-mile boardwalk will lead you over Spearfish Creek and down to the opposite side of the falls. Stay up top to view where Little Spearfish Creek feeds into this waterfall, and even cross the road to view a series of smaller cascades. From here, travel west on Roughlock Falls Road to view the Roughlock Falls themselves. For just over a mile, the road follows Little Spearfish Creek as it meanders over boulders, between canyon walls, and under footbridges to bring you to a 59-foot waterfall. This is by far the best maintained of all the viewing areas in the canyon, with multiple boardwalks, handrails, and, of course, bathrooms. Half a dozen smaller cascades round out this stunning portion of the creek. I absolutely love how easy the National Parks Service has made this whole area to enjoy for everyone of any skill level. And this is just so beautifully maintained. Way to go, Parks Department! Fun fact, the final scenes of the 1990 Western Dances with Wolves was filmed right here. The movie follows a Civil War captain who requests a transfer to the Western Territories as his next posting, so he can see the frontier before it disappears. The movie stars Kevin Costner and won 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. I am a little young to have experienced this cultural phenomenon firsthand, but I have seen it since and can tell you it is heartbreaking. It deals heavily with themes of Native Americans being betrayed and robbed of their lands, as well as some of America's natural beauty being eaten up by the expansion of civilization. But that said, most of it takes place right here in South Dakota, many in locations we visited during our South Dakota series. So it is more than appropriate that we end here, as they did, at Roughlock Falls. In fact, they filmed that portion in winter, and it looks very much like my footage does right here. Our last stop on this drive through Spearfish Canyon is at the old Stage Stop Cafe at Cheyenne Crossing. It was part of a series of stops between Cheyenne, Wyoming, and Deadwood that brought both settlers and prospectors into the area. Quirky just begins to scratch the surface of the Stage Stop Cafe. Inside, you'll find a rock shop, a gift shop, and a diner located at the back. The first thing we ordered, after some very hot coffee, were tater kegs. These, we've found, are a Midwest specialty, and we order them anytime they're on the menu. Potatoes and cheese are blended together and deep fried to perfection. The Stage Stop is also famous for their Indian taco. This is traditional Native American fry bread topped with every condiment you might find at a taco bar. I was far and away not the only one ordering this, but I have to admit, it wasn't quite for me. I was born and raised in the great state of Texas, and when you say taco, I am thinking Tex-Mex. And this just puts me in mind of an inside-out chimichanga with a lot of bread. But I love trying new things. And if this isn't your cup of tea, there are plenty of other things on the menu that were delicious, like this bison patty melt. On the whole, this is absolutely worth a stop. For one thing, you're not going to find any chain restaurants down in the canyon. Everything here is local. And for another, it's charming, quaint, and part of the local history and culture of the area, which is kind of our whole thing on this channel. Join us next time as we leave behind the wild frontier of South Dakota to examine a different chapter of American history from that time period, the life and times of Abraham Lincoln. We travel to Springfield, Illinois for all things presidential, from a live reading of the Declaration of Independence to a complete tour of his presidential museum and even a visit to his final resting place.